In the last few years, the manga versus comic book debate has been making its runs online. People online talking about how manga has been taking over the market in America, why this is happening and whatnot. Some of these arguments are pretty valid. Others are made in bad faith, using it as fuel to the culture war that has been raging on these last couple of years, saying American comics are too woke or too political or whatnot, when manga are just as political as American comics. These people truly do not understand that there are more nuances to why comics are having lower sales while manga sales have been boosting in the last few years. I've talked about this topic a few times on my channel, so check out some of the older videos on my channel to see my perspective on this debate. Anyways, I want to change this narrative of manga versus comics and talk about how these two types of art forms have learned from each other. What better way to show this than with the comic I want to talk about today, UltraMega. UltraMega is a ongoing comic book series by comic book artist James Harren, who is best known for his work in Rumble and BPRD and other things in the Mignolaverse. UltraMega is about a cosmic plague that is spreading across the world, turning people into violent, monstrous kaiju. The only defenders of the everyday man is the UltraMega, which, at least according to the first issue, are people chosen by Adam UltraMega and his eyes. The first issue, we are introduced to Jason, Aaron, and Stephen Meyer. These three are the first to be picked to be the UltraMegas of Earth, fighting all the kaijus as they appear. Jason is a former boxer turned husband, janitor, father, and superhero. Aaron is a streetwalker, and at this point of the story, there's not much known about him aside from that. Then lastly is Stefan, who is the most interesting of the three because he is a child when he is chosen to be an UltraMega. In the first issue, which is about 60 pages long, these three UltraMegas get in a brutal battle with the kaiju child that was birthed and raised by Jason's ex-wife Lilith, who was infected with the cosmic kaiju plague. Jason abandoned the pregnant Lilith because Jason believed his UltraMega powers triggered those who have the cosmic plague into transforming. Now, years later, Jason has to deal with this kaiju son, which doesn't go well. After the brutal and deadly battle, the city gets flooded with Jason's blood and a lot of people die. Now, jump skip a few years later, and the story follows Jason's second son, Noah, as he takes the mantle of the UltraMega and deals with the failures of the fallen UltraMegas of past. I don't want to do a full summary of this comic because I don't want to spoil too much for those who are interested in reading this series. The story is still ongoing with the issues of UltraMega Volume 2 coming out this year. Maybe once the series is completely over, I will do an overview of the comic because I really enjoyed this series and I would love to do a overall telling of the things to come. The manga influences. Let's talk about the manga influences on UltraMega and James Harren's artwork. Clearly, UltraMega is influenced by the Super Sentai and Tokusatsu hero genre. You can see the Super Sentai influence in the character designs of the UltraMegas and the use of kaiju as the main antagonist of the story. For those who don't know, Super Sentai is a genre of Japanese TV shows with things such as Power Rangers, Kamen Rider, and Ultraman. Tokusatsu is a Japanese term for live-action films or TV programming that use practical effects like plastic monsters, suits, and stuff. So things like the Godzilla franchise would be considered this form of Japanese film.
Hopefully not upset the people who are a fan of that. What is Tokusatsu? The genre?
Tokusatsu. It's that sort of Ultraman giant.
Yeah.
Superhero.
I want to I'm not trying to lift my leg on it. I have nothing negative, not a criticism of that genre. It's just kind of a vehicle to do some really bizarre things, to explore the inner life of a giant karate man. I'm such a weirdo. I'm not a super fanboy of it. Like, I don't know how to. I've barely watched some of the show. It's just the aesthetic I'm obsessed with. It's so insane looking that I had to do my own version of it.
James Harren's art style takes heavily from manga, especially when it comes to the fight scenes. The fight scenes in UltraMega are high-paced and high-octane. There are tons of speed lines, ink splatters, and spots of screen tones, very reminiscent of shonen battle manga. Even the flow of the story is very shonen manga-esque, with it being very fast-paced and easy to follow along. Harren doesn't bogart the pages with too much dialogue and really lets the artwork do the heavy lifting. You can tell this is a writer-artist story. Harren says he grew up watching a lot of different anime, OVAs, and reading tons of manga.
Manga's finally big. I grew up reading manga. I grew up reading European comics. And when I started in 2009, that was new. That it looked like it was something that I was doing, but it was just the stuff that I was into. No, the influences. I think I talked about this in an interview. I was going through a phase of just the Japanese the anime OVAs from the '90s when I don't know the history very well, so someone can correct me at some point. But from what I understand, it was like small animation houses with it seemed like they would get the licenses to certain properties, and it was a very, very talented golden age '80s and '90s animators just getting away with murder for like an hour-long VHS or 90 minutes or whatever the hell it was.
For those who've read UltraMega, you can see this at first glance. To me, James Harren's art style is a good blend of both manga and American comic books, using what I like to call the dirty ink style. Harren uses tons of splatter and dry brush techniques in his work, and especially maximizes this style in UltraMega. A fun fact, Robert Kirkman, the writer of popular comic book series The Walking Dead and Invincible, came up with the name of UltraMega.
The titles, kudos to Robert Kirkman. He came through with that. I didn't have a clue what to call this thing. I just called it untitled Ultraman project.
Harren isn't the only prominent comic book artist who is heavily influenced by manga in their work and art. Let's look at a few others. Daniel Warren Johnson is another one of those dirty ink style comic book artists who blends both the American comic book and manga artist tendencies together very well. If I had to say which comic book series from Daniel Warren Johnson you should read that displays this style to its fullest, I would recommend Extremity, Dual Powerbomb, and Wonder Woman Dead Earth. But honestly, most of Daniel Johnson's bibliography has this style, so I would just say pick whatever series and dig into it. You will get those manga essence in most of his work. Daniel Warren Johnson is an avid manga fan, citing Appleseed as one of his biggest influences on his work.
But after college and kind of like really dipping my toes in a big way into comics. I mean, I started to try and do comics professionally summer of 2012, and I started getting a deeper appreciation for the art form and trying to figure out how to bring energy and life into my images in a way that I really felt it was lacking. I was working on my webcomic Space Mullet at the time, and I was like having to draw these action scenes, and I'm like, everything looks so dead, like everything looks so still, even though they're doing action-y things. So I was kind of looking for artists that had a really dynamic, active style. And that's kind of when I really started rediscovering Masamune Shirow.
Daniel Warren Johnson also writes and draws pretty much most of the comics he works on as a true mangaka would. If you look at Daniel Warren Johnson's work, you can see the manga influences on the way he draws up his fight scenes, like Harren using screen tone, speed lines, and tons of movement. Daniel Warren Johnson artwork also has a lot of impact on it, a lot of vast, grandiose scenes and things of that nature. Daniel Warren Johnson also has a lot of kaiju type monsters in his comics, as well as mechs. One of the main characters in Extremity is a mech robot type character, very reminiscent to the mechs in Appleseed. Lastly, another popular comic book artist who cites manga as an influence is Jorge Jimenez, who is like the golden boy of DC Comics. This guy has been the main artist for Batman for years. He's also done a run on the Justice League and Super Sons. George says Naruto is one of his favorite series coming up, and that reading Naruto helped inspire him to get back into drawing and making comics and take his craft and career seriously. You can see the manga influences in George's character designs in his comics. He doesn't have the same manga fight scene sensibilities as Daniel Warren Johnson or James Harren, and that may be due to the scripts that he's getting or the fact that he mainly draws digitally. I'm not sure, but either way, his artwork is still beautifully and masterfully done. There are so many more comic artists you can tell take influence from manga, but what does that mean? Or mainstream comic book publishers like Marvel and DC trying to keep up with Kodansha and Viz Media by pushing artists whose artwork skews more manga-esque? Are these comic book artists seeing the writing on the wall and trying to get with the program and be more like the manga artists in Japan? What does this really mean? Literally nothing. Manga and Eastern culture has been influencing American comics for decades. One of the founding fathers of Image Comics, Rob Liefeld, was taking influence from manga way back at his peak, citing Otoma as one of his favorites. You can even see the manga inspiration in Liefeld's page layouts and panel structures in his old comics. There are even references to Kaneda's bike in an issue of Rob Liefeld's Youngbloods.
Necessarily just the Akira bike, but it looks like Cable's sitting on top of that, man. So what was the mindset when you were putting this together?
Well, it was absolutely an Akira bike, and that's absolutely my kind of very blatant. Look, Cable's in my book too.
Frank Miller took heavy manga influence when he was working on his series Ronin. Joe Murata, who was a prominent comic book artist in the mid-90s to the early 2000s, has been greatly noted as bringing his manga stylings into the American comic book market back in the day with his comic book series Battle Chasers. Joe Mad said that his main character Garrison from Battle Chasers takes some influence from Guts, the main character in Berserk. From 2000 to 2002, Marvel even had a manga line called Mangaverse, which was an alternate Marvel universe using comic book artists to draw in the popular manga style of the time. This Marvel Mangaverse was created by Ben Dunn of Antarctic and Ninja High School fame, another artist who brought his manga influence into American comics. The best thing that came out of the Marvel Mangaverse was the Spider-Man Legend of Spider-Clan from Andrew Carr and Scotty Young. I really enjoyed that comic series, one of the earliest comic books that I read, so I would highly recommend reading it. There are even more people like comic book artist and YouTube tutorial legend Mark Crilly, who was an early adopter of the manga style in his comics with series like Brody Ghost and Miki Falls. But don't get it twisted, manga has taken its fair share of influences from American comics. Look at series like My Hero Academia, whose creator Koihei is a fan of Marvel comics, and even look at One Punch Man. Saitama is the prototypical comic book character design with his cape, his gloves, and everything like that. And both of those series are one of my favorite manga series to have came out in a while. Hell, manga wouldn't even be here without Walt Disney and Carl Barks, whose comics and movies had big influences on Osamu Tezuka, the godfather of manga. All this is to say that who cares what type of comics are sold more than the other? At the end of the day, American comic books and manga are literally the same thing. It doesn't matter where or who makes it. Comics and manga are just an artistic form of expression used to tell beautifully crafted stories and bring joy to those who are reading it. The only subtle difference I can see within manga and American comics is the types of stories that become popular within the craft. We can thank things like the Comic Code Authority and censorship to the lack of diverse stories in American mainstream comic books compared to manga. The Japanese government literally wants to see manga thrive because they know manga is one of the biggest exports out of their country, so the government is boosting so much money into these manga publishing companies as of late. Look up the Japanese cool protocol. At the end of the day, I love the cross blending these two types of comics have made in the past few decades to where we can get a series like UltraMega, which in my eyes is the love child between these two artistic styles. So again, who really cares about manga versus comics? So yeah, that's UltraMega. That is a slight history about manga's influence on American culture and a little bit about how American culture helped cultivate manga in a way, right? Again, I think it's weird how people like to booster up one medium and bring the other one down. Like people are literally trying to diminish American comics like it hasn't been reigning supreme in this like sequential art thing for the last like 100 years or so, and manga has just started getting into popularity the last like 15 years. People knew what manga was, you know what I'm saying? People who are fans of just comics in general knew what manga was, but it hasn't been as popular as it is now. And there's, like I said, so many factors into why manga has become more popular, not just the fact of like high quality storytelling and artwork and things of that nature, because there are high quality comics that are coming out today. Just people don't like to talk about those comics, right? If we actually talked about the underground scene in American comics, it would be a whole different discussion and rhetoric behind American comics. But people only just like to talk about Marvel and DC. But, you know, it is what it is. I'm just glad to see manga becoming popular. I'm just glad to see that American comics, no matter the pushback that has been getting, is still thriving for the most part. You know what I'm saying? I just love that there are these stories like UltraMega that are coming out that are a beautiful love child of the two genres, the two types of comics and stuff like that. So I would highly recommend reading UltraMega if you have it. It is a good book. It's a quick read. It's really enjoyable, really fun. Also, pretty much all of Daniel Warren Johnson's stuff. He's one of my favorites. I would highly recommend checking out his stuff too. Like I said, Extremity, Wonder Woman, Dead Earth, Dual Power Bomb. He has so many great stories. Murder Falcon that just are amazing. You know, I would just highly recommend his work. And you know, there's a lot of people who are out there like that. And if I miss somebody, please let me know. Comment below a good East meets West comic that's came out in the last few years or so. I would love to check out. I'm always looking to check out new artists and new comics and things of that nature. Speaking of that, I myself am a comic book creator. I recently put out my second creator-owned book of the year, Tit for Tat, which is a horror comic about a character named Gil who uses his imaginary friend to help him get revenge on a school bully. So check it out. I just got my copies in the last couple weeks. So put your orders in on my website. Click the link in the description. I'm also taking orders for Troll Call, which is an anti-bully anthology book that I did with the K fam. Go check them out. Power to the Panel. Check out their channel. Tit for Tat and Troll Call. I'm taking orders right now on my website. I also have books on my website you can download for free. So check them out. Give me some feedback. Like, I love to hear what you guys have to say about the work that I do. And also sign up for my mailing list so you can get updates when I drop new videos, new comics, and upload stuff to the website. I highly appreciate you guys for watching this video to the end. Like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.